Founders Park Media and Samurai 7 Books presents Moonbase Rogue, Book 3 of the Viper series, written by Mark Caldwell Jones, read by Play AI. Part 2, Backs to the Wall. Chapter 6, Angelos Grove Estate. 3 days after the explosion in Buenos Aires, Natalie Nicks and Fatima Nasrallah were back in Los Angeles, safe and sound at their headquarters in Angelos Grove. The estate was a multi-million-dollar property owned by DARPA and hidden in the Hollywood Hills. It served as their assigned headquarters and the West Coast base for DR Ultra. The team both lived and worked there, and Nicks loved it. It was one of the few luxuries of her job. The 20-acre estate was the pinnacle of extravagance. The Tudor-styled mansion was surrounded by manicured English gardens full of ivory roses and pink bougainvillea, which seemed to be perpetually blooming. The infamous researcher Jason Gelberg had built and named the property Angelos, after a goddess of the underworld. Gelberg had made millions from Pentagon funding and pursued experiments in ESP, telepathy, remote viewing, and psychedelics. His eccentricity attracted Hollywood elites, thrusting Gelberg into stardom. He graced national news programs, took acting roles, and his government-endowed wealth erected and maintained the sprawling estate. However, fortune didn't favor Gelberg for long. His inability to provide verifiable results led to demands for fund recovery. Accused of fraud, he handed the estate over to escape incarceration. The property's peculiar design, a product of Gelberg's psychic experiments, a veritable Faraday cage impenetrable to radio waves and other electromagnetic interference, made it an appealing acquisition for DR Ultra, who eventually handed it over to Nicks's team. The library and labs were a controlled environment, conceived originally to measure psychic phenomena, now serving a wholly different purpose. When the team's leader, Colonel Jack Byrne, moved in, he made sure the Faraday cage became their main workspace. It was fantastic for those dealing with sensitive electronics and provided another layer of security from eavesdropping. Byrne joked it was their secret headquarters, the cage for short. The rest of the main building was touched up and redecorated, giving each team member their own personal living space, including luxurious bedrooms and private baths. It beat your standard Army accommodations any day of the week. No one complained. Nicks enjoyed spending time on the grounds, joking that she owned her own private park. Gizmo, her toy fox terrier, insisted on running outside at least twice a day. He joyfully ran through the shrubs to the pond and spider lilies, always ending up in a grassy area shaded by old oaks. Her favorite thing to do was take a good paperback, some iced tea, and camp out under the trees while Gizmo chased squirrels. Nature had always soothed Nicks. She'd spent countless hours in the Colorado wilderness as a young girl. The fresh air, the smell of trees, flowers, and even the soil somehow calmed her in ways other places couldn't. But today, there wasn't enough time to enjoy her beautiful surroundings. They had an hour at best before their team meeting, and everyone was rushing to take advantage of their remaining free time. Gizmo settled for a quick walk to the Oaks. On the way back, Nicks found Fatima near the pool. Bruised and battered, but thankfully no worse for wear, she sunned herself near the diving board. They compared scars. Nicks was wrapped in large swaths of Regeniderm bandages meant to heal her artificial skin. Her body was a patchwork of purple and black, and the not-so-subtle sting of pissing blood was the fun reminder of how rough things had gotten. But hey, at least she was a fast healer. A weird cosmic joke that balanced out being a human punching bag. Fatima had her hand in a special brace, with one finger broken and one fractured. She joked it wasn't her trigger finger, but recovery would not be easy for her friend, and she felt partly responsible. When Nicks returned to the kitchen, she headed straight for the coffee maker. Gizmo, meanwhile, was nudging his food bowl, eagerly lapping up any leftovers. The clink of his metal name tag against the bowl was persistent. Okay, I get the message, Nix sighed, half amused. She got the coffee maker going, filling it with water and turning it on. Then she attended to Gizmo's bowls, cleaning one and refilling both with fresh water and gourmet dog food, which smelled remarkably like beef pot roast. If Uncle Wilco saw this, Nix mused aloud, he'd make fun of us both. The grizzled old sailor, her adoptive uncle, and the man who had raised her after the tragic loss of both parents, loved animals but was old school when it came to caring for them. Spending hard-earned money on high-end hippie dog food would not go over well in his house. Gizmo barked 2 short yips, as if to say the old Navy SEAL could stick it. Nix laughed. Yeah, I'll tell him you said that when we chat this afternoon. She warmed the food in the microwave and set it before her very grateful dog. His tail whipped 90 miles an hour as he dug into his breakfast. Satisfied Gizmo was taken care of, she poured a fresh mug of hot coffee and headed off to find the rest of her team. Nix found the team's quartermaster and chief badass mechanic, Sergeant Margaret Quinn, a few levels below in the testing bunker, shooting at an enlarged photo of a beautiful redhead. The word bitch was scrawled across the picture in bold block letters. Quinn was an enigma, tender yet unyielding at her core, a disciplined military veteran with the spirit of a rebel. Fiery red hair and icy blue eyes created a striking contrast, while her petite stature at 5'6" belied an intimidating aura worthy of a seasoned soldier. Her skin was a living mural of vibrant tattoos that celebrated punk legends like the Sex Pistols. Nix loved Maggie Quinn like a sister and often said she wouldn't do the job without her. However, sometimes the woman was too intense, even for those who loved her. DR Ultra had recognized her unique talents and recruited Quinn when she had already distinguished herself as one of the rare female members of the British 21 SAS Reserve. Her reputation there was forged from her exceptional skills both as a soldier and as a gifted engineer, capable of constructing or repairing anything from a helicopter engine to a Predator drone. This unique talent earned her the codename Gremlin. What the heck are you doing? Nix laughed, already teasing her. Isn't that a picture of Roxy, your girlfriend? Quinn eyed the bandaged arms and then said, You should never trust a redhead, I'm telling you. That little pixie is a traitorous bitch. I caught her cheating. Bloody hurt, too. Quinn then fired another long burst from her automatic rifle. The string of bullets ripped into the photo, shredding it to pieces. How did you find out? Nix asked. Did you put another geo-tracker in her car? Oh, I did not this time. Well, thank goodness, Nix sighed. It seemed Quinn's obsessive nature was great for engineering, but a liability in the love department. So, what happened? I put the tracker on her motorcycle. Nix threw up her hands. Maggie, what the hell were you thinking? I was thinking you can't trust a lesbian that rides motorcycles, that's what. But you ride motorcycles. Case in point, isn't it? Quinn then picked up a weapon Nix hadn't seen since the attack on the Woden group in Geneva, a long, strange, space-age rifle. Quinn squeezed the trigger, and white-hot molten plasma shot from the nozzle in a tight stream. The picture of Roxy, what was left of it, immediately burst into flames. When there was nothing but a trembling cloud of black ash left, Quinn turned to Nix with a Cheshire grin. Ah, I feel much better now. Nix laughed. Then Quinn laughed. Quinn put down her strange weapon and let out a tremendous sigh of relief. Better luck next time, Nix said, giving Quinn's arm a squeeze. I don't know, Nat, Quinn said sadly. Love just may not be in the cards for me. Nix gave her a quick side hug, and the 2 women headed back upstairs, eventually making their way to the cage. They sat down at the enormous conference table, and the conversation slowly turned from Quinn's sour relationship to the job. A few minutes later, 2 of their other teammates, Colonel Jack Byrne and Dr. Ken Park, strolled in and took their seats. Colonel Jack Byrne, the team's leader, was a man in his 30s who wore his military history not just in his attitude but physically too. Standing at 6'3", his toned form bore the scars of many physical ordeals encountered in the line of duty as a Green Beret and Special Forces operator. His clean military buzz cut enhanced his strong, square jawline, adding to his aura of disciplined authority. Peering out from under his typically furrowed brow were his piercing blue eyes, flashing with an intensity that hinted at a sharp mind behind all that brawn. His rugged good looks held their own charm, particularly when his face wasn't locked in his usual serious frown. And those lips, more often than not a flat line, could break into a grin that would soften his hardened exterior, adding a dash of boyish appeal. Mouse, or Dr. Lee Park, was the opposite of Byrne in almost every way. In his mid-20s, with pleasant features and a couch potato build, he bore a youthful allure. His trendy pompadour and bold modern wardrobe echoed the vibrant world of K-pop rather than a typical military outfit. Yet, despite his distinctly non-military persona, Mouse's contributions were invaluable. His mastery in the realm of technology set him apart. Mouse had no desire for the harsh realities of the battlefield. His decision to join Reaper Force wasn't rooted in a warrior's calling but stemmed from his friendship with Byrne and an irresistible intrigue in their unique mission. His participation on the team was about safeguarding the future using his technological prowess to keep the emerging weapons of tomorrow firmly within the American military's grasp. His brief experience with the team had made him a true believer. The present needed to be protected from the threats of tomorrow. Soon after, Fatima Nasrallah entered the room, grabbed a bottle of flavored water, and joined them at the table. Now the entire team was together, and all eyes turned to Nicks as she described the hard fight with Valentina Silva. Fatima cursed as she described her part of the operation. "And there's that," Nicks said, pointing at her foul-mouthed friend. "I need to learn Kurdish as soon as possible." "I suggest you don't," Fatima said. A devilish smile curled up on her face. "And your artificial skin is torn to shreds again," Mouse added. "I have some upgrades that should fix all of those problems." He tilted his head in Quinn's direction. "First, we need to get Maggie's head screwed back on correctly. I'm not having any luck with that." Quinn gave Mouse the middle finger from across the table. "Come on, Mags, aren't I enough for you?" Mouse said playfully. "Absolutely no," Quinn quipped. "Well, if you ask me, you should find a woman who's a better match professionally. Someone who understands your world, who has their eyes focused on some bigger goals other than getting laid at the latest grab-a-gash club in West Hollywood." "For the record, I didn't ask you," she sneered. "But you're right about working on Nat's upgrades. That would be a good distraction." Mouse gave her a thumbs up, seemingly thankful that he hadn't lost his friend to the ravages of a bad romance. Mouse's phone buzzed. He tapped it, pushing the call to voicemail. Seconds later, the phone rang again. He pushed that one to voicemail as well. Then a string of texts flooded in. "That's one persistent booty call," Nicks needled him. "Who is she?" "It's his mother," Quinn laughed. Mouse blushed and looked away. "It's always his mother," Quinn laughed again. "Shut up, Mags," Mouse snapped. He looked over at Nicks sheepishly and shrugged. "My mother is a force of nature." "Well, at least she cares," Fatima offered. "A bit too much if you ask me," Mouse complained. "Poor guy. The woman doesn't approve of one bloody thing the kid does," Quinn said. "She thinks he's wasting his time working with us, calls him the team mascot." A string of chuckles rolled around the table. "She's getting old and confused. She doesn't understand our work," Mouse complained. "Well, that makes two of us." "I don't understand any of it either," Fatima mused. Nicks eyed Mouse carefully. She got the sense they weren't getting the full story. Something else was going on. As if sensing the same thing, Quinn added, "Mom Mouse wants her son Mouse to quit our team. Thinks he's never been one to take big risks and says he's not brave enough to be in some kind of military operation, and because of that, she says he's wasting his life. Is that true? Byrne asked, slightly amused. You've hardly wasted a minute. No one can keep up with you. My mom is a pretty typical Korean mother, very insistent I follow a more conventional path. But you're a millionaire and not even 30 years old, Nicks argued. An innovative patent license to the Department of Defense had introduced Mouse to Byrne and made him extremely wealthy. Good point, Quinn said. Maybe Nat should start running your PR. She could talk to your mom personally. I might hire you for reals. Mouse gave her a half smile and looked at his feet. I need all the good press I can get. Anyway, she's right about me being a chicken shit coward. I certainly can't stand up to her. Hearing about the personal troubles of Quinn and Mouse made Nicks think of her own. Her uncle, the man who had raised her from the age of 11, was sick with cancer. She was extremely worried about him, even though he'd reassured her everything was fine. He had finished with his chemotherapy only a few weeks earlier. She had to check on him today before any other crisis took up her time. Byrne cleared his throat. Let's officially start the meeting, he suggested. We've got a lot to cover. Chapter 7. When the meeting started, Director David Penbrook appeared holographically and walked like a ghost up to the conference table, then sat down. In reality, he was thousands of miles away, in his secure communication room, housed in the depths of Blackwood Lodge, a covert DR Ultra base. Penbrook bore an air of meticulous elegance. He was a slender man in his 50s, draped in a well-fitted slate-gray suit offset by a periwinkle button-down shirt. His chunky, black-rimmed designer glasses and peppered hair underscored his scholarly demeanor. Known for his somewhat peculiar social etiquette, he surveyed the room with quick, darting glances, shying away from meeting anyone's gaze head-on and offering no hint of a smile. He mumbled a few innocuous comments while looking at his computer tablet. "Good morning, everyone," he said, tapping a control pad on his desk. "Let me patch in our DIA liaison so we can get started." Instantly, another holographic projection filled the room. General Elmore Drummond, a familiar face to the team, gave everyone a wide smile. The general was a formidable figure. His piercing gaze sat under a stern brow and sharp, hawk-like nose. His close-cropped silver hair provided a contrast to his tan skin. Drummond exuded the aura of a battle-hardened warrior with an intellectual twist, the kind of man who would strangle an enemy with his tie if it weren't necessary to keep his uniform perfectly in place. "I'll never feel comfortable with this device," he said, a bemused grin flashing. "Damn wonderful and damn strange at the same time." "Yes, well, thank you for joining us, General. We'll start by reviewing the incident in Argentina." Penbrook turned to Nicks. "Captain, you have the floor." Nicks, combing a dark purple strand of hair out of her eyes, glanced at the few notes she'd made, then gave a brief recap of the operation. She explained all the events that led up to the confrontation with the woman they had known as Valentina Silva inside the Buenos Aires apartment, saving the most detail for what they had found afterward in the secret room. "It seems the laptop and the pictures on my phone are the only undamaged evidence that survived the explosion." Mouse provided background information on discovering that Valentina Silva was using the code name Chimera. It appeared she was a relatively new operative working for the remnants of the Dharmapala, a terrorist group that had been the bane of Nicks's existence since she joined the team. "The Dharmapala has scattered since we took out Riza Asmara. What's left is calling itself the Syndicate, which is a much less pretentious name if you ask me," Mouse said, looking around the table. "But it seems they are still using Asmara's old network." Drummond cleared his throat. "And you've run into this woman before?" Nicks nodded and said, "Yes, I encountered her in Mexico after the incident with Travis Raylock and his Pantherix plot." Chimera had lured Nicks into a room where she had her last encounter with Riza Asmara. The woman had been on their radar ever since. Penbrook looked down at his report. He seemed agitated at any mention of Asmara. but Nicks didn't know why. Fortunately, a DIA forensics team was allowed to assess the bomb scene. They found remnants of this strange suit you described Chimera wearing, Pembroke said. What was left of this thing, or exoskeleton, as I was told to call it, has been packed up and shipped to your team at Angelus Grove. Sergeant Quinn and Dr. Park can study it, since they seem to be the best in our group for that particular task. Mouse elbowed Quinn, who glowered back at her friend, immediately extinguishing his moment of pride. What about the dead man found in that secret room? Quinn asked. His name is Chan Lo, according to Gustavo Ruiz, an officer with Argentina's SI. Coincidentally, the SI was watching that very apartment. And who are the SI? Asked Fatma. The Intelligence Secretariat, which is Argentina's CIA, Drummond replied. According to Ruiz, Lo was part of their counterintelligence program, surveilling the Chinese Academy of Space Technology. He was monitoring the movements of that organization's senior leadership. Specifically, a General Sheng Fu and his entourage, who were flying in and out of Buenos Aires on a regular basis. Nicks raised an eyebrow. But what was Chimera doing in his apartment? The best theory is that Chimera was there to terminate Lo, Drummond offered. But why Lo? Quinn asked. And why are we assuming she was there to kill him? Mouse asked. Because he was dead, Fatima quipped. Good point. Mouse agreed. Yes, many of the facts are cut and dry. It does appear Chimera killed Lo, Drummond said. I think we can safely assume the reason Lo was killed relates to the fact that he was discovered to be a double agent. Information on the laptop suggests he was paid by operatives from the Dharmapala as well as the SI. He was working both sides and it finally caught up to him. At least, that's the current theory. General Drummond, can you give us more details about what your analysts found on the laptop? Pembroke asked. Drummond nodded. Yes, of course. The laptop had dossiers on a host of targets. Colonel Byrne, I believe you can bring up the data on your end? Byrne tapped a few more keys, and sections of the DIA report appeared on the large screen hanging over their table. The display transitioned from images of Gustavo Ruiz and Chan Lo to a screen full of new photos. All of them seemed to be Chinese nationals. There was one image of some kind of industrial complex in the desert. A location tag identified the place as Las Lajas Space Center. As I've already said, General Shang Fu seemed to be the central focus, Drummond explained. He tapped the image and it enlarged, filling half the screen. Shang Fu is the head of China's military space program. Why would a man like that be in Argentina? Byrne asked. Very good question. It's controversial. But Argentina gave China a 50-year lease on some land near Las Lajas, which is out in the Patagonian desert. They built a complex there. The stated purpose is to relay radio transmissions from their satellites and lunar probes. That's not suspicious at all, Quinn chuckled. Drummond smiled. Yes, you can see why the SI was interested. However, it wasn't just Shang Fu that Lo was watching. It seems he had several more targets. For instance, one of Shang Fu's top scientists, Dr. Yingyue Fang. She's an astrobiologist specializing in genetics. We have some unverified reports she's running a black ops program focused on something called gene drive technology. The science is very dangerous and highly unethical, since it has the potential to alter the entire human genome. Damn, the last thing we need is another virus escaping from some shitty lab in China, Fatima said, sitting up straighter. Yes, that's a major concern, but we don't really have a clear picture of Fang. Not yet, at least, Drummond said. He continued by advancing to the next set of photographs. Now the main photo showed a handsome, dark-haired, well-tanned young executive wearing a designer suit. Drummond said, This gentleman seems to be mixed up in all of this somehow. His name is Martin Ryder. Ryder is a French national, an engineer, and an entrepreneur whose company builds space vehicles and equipment. Mouse spoke up. Yeah, I've followed some of Ryder's work. He put a hell of a lot of money into a company called Astro Ventures. I thought it was an insane investment when they went public with the details. Why insane? Nicks asked, taking a drink of her coffee. It was a mining company, Mouse said. A lunar mining company. Yes, Dr. Park is right, General Drummond continued. Ryder's main focus seems to be on technology that exploits off-world mining, an enterprise that up until now was purely speculative. What do you mean, up until now? Burns' eyes widened. Are they seriously talking about sending miners into space? It's already happened, Drummond said. Ryder, with help from the United States, established a working lunar outpost several months back. It's one of our most secret collaborations. This is why it's so concerning to see intel about him on Chanlo's laptop. The team gasped. Everyone shuffled in their seats, sitting straighter and leaning in. But that would require a massive undertaking, Mouse sputtered. Crazy stuff, like advanced vehicles, new space equipment, and people living and working on the moon. Yes, a viable colony or Moonbase, so to speak, Pembroke said nonchalantly. He glared at Drummond, who glared back, but said nothing more. Reaper Force? Pembroke began, locking his gaze with each member. You're about to receive one of the most confidential briefings in the history of the United States military. This goes far beyond anything within the purview of the DIA or CIA. As he paused, the room fell so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Our nation, under the stewardship of DR Ultra and Space Force, has established an operational base on the moon. Codenamed Luna 1, it's crewed by 5 of our best astronauts. An undercurrent of shock rippled through the room, and Pembroke held up a hand for silence. Until 2 days ago, communication with Luna 1 was routine. Then we lost all contact, he added, the severity of the situation clear in his words. System readings show the base is still operational. In fact, one particular project called Godforge was just activated today, but the crew hasn't responded to a single radio transmission. Is it some kind of technical problem with the communication equipment? Quinn asked. No, that has been ruled out. While there was a brief problem with one radio tower, all communications are working perfectly. What is Godforge exactly? Mouse asked. Godforge is still highly classified. Suffice it to say, it's a set of technologies related to advanced space travel, but right now that's not important. Our primary concern is that the 5 crew members stationed there are in need of rescue. Pembroke paused, letting the information settle in before proceeding. Thankfully, the arm of DR Ultra working with Space Force has an experimental space plane, Persephone, at its disposal. They're currently prepping it for a rescue mission. Drummond tapped some buttons, and a 3-dimensional model of the Persephone space plane appeared holographically over the conference table, dangling there as if it were hanging from invisible strings. It was a sleek, futuristic vehicle that looked more like a jet than a traditional rocket or shuttle. That image cross-faded into another, depicting an overview of the actual Moonbase. Another round of gasps and murmurs rippled through the team until Mouse slapped a hand down on the table dramatically. I knew it, goddammit, I knew it. Didn't I tell you, Quinn? Fatima? Quinn covered her face as if embarrassed. Apologies to our senior staff. Dr. Park over here has been blathering on about a secret alien moonbase for months now. He's deep into the weeds of some crazy conspiracy that's taken root on social media. Some amateur astronomers claim there is alien activity. Structures being built, alien ships buried under the moon dust up there, that kind of crazy shite. Why can't it be true? Fatima said, crossing her arms. My teammate is a walking, talking robot. Aliens on the moon? Isn't a stretch. Pembroke looked down at his tablet. Yes, well, I appreciate the enthusiasm for the topic. Mouse frowned at Quinn, as if insulted. But I thought you believed me. Don't worry, I believe you, Mouse, Fatima said. And let me just say, if there are aliens, I would love to kill some. I've always admired those Ripley movies. She's so damn sexy with those big guns. Okay, with all due respect, it seems we are getting lost in the weeds here, Burns said, sounding slightly frustrated by the banter. He tipped his head in Pembroke's direction and said, "Let's all refocus. I sense there is more Director Pembroke wants to explain about this situation." "Yes, thank you, Colonel. We do need to connect some dots." Pembroke leaned in, his face reflecting urgency. "It seems Chimera, Buenos Aires, Lo, and the information on the laptop are all related to what is happening with Luna 1. Drummond cleared his throat and added, "Yes, it is the analysis of the DIA that the remnants of the Dharmapala are freelancing for another government in an effort to steal our country's space technology." "What government?" Fatima asked. "The Chinese," Drummond answered. "More specifically, China's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, which oversees China's military space program. It seems Lo was about to expose this plot. That's why Chimera was there, in Buenos Aires." "But why would the Chinese do this?" Quinn asked. "Most likely to steal information about the technologies being tested at Luna 1 without risking a direct confrontation," Pembroke said. "So they've hired the Dharmapala to do their dirty work?" Nicks added. "Yes, that's what all the evidence suggests," Drummond nodded. "Whatever their motives, they're a cunning adversary, and we can't afford to take chances," Pembroke said. "Therefore, since our intelligence suggests our enemies are gathering information about Persephone, I'm assigning Reaper Force to protect it. We can't have any outside group sabotage that rescue mission." "I think it's clear how important our involvement is," Byrne offered. "Perhaps we could clarify the next steps. What exactly do you want our team to do?" Pembroke adjusted his glasses, then laid out the plan. "The Persephone mission is led by Lieutenant Colonel James Rawlins and his Delta Black detachment from Space Force. They are quite capable, but because there is a credible threat from this new version of the Dharmapala, Reaper Force will be posted at the base. Colonel Byrne and Captain Nicks will provide that security detail. With our staff at Blackwood Lodge, General Drummond will review all the technology being tested at Luna 1. We want a full accounting of everything that might be compromised. Finally, because she's a pilot, one of our best engineers, and has invaluable experience with our enemy, Sergeant Quinn will be embedded with the crew of the Persephone." Everyone appeared surprised by that assignment. Quinn stared blankly at Pembroke, her mouth agape. "Wait, what?" she asked. "You want me on the rocket, like in space?" "Yes, is that a problem?" Pembroke replied. "Bloody hell, no." Quinn looked as if she'd just won the lottery. Nicks and Byrne grinned at her obvious excitement. "But why me? I have no astronaut training whatsoever." "That will be taken care of," Pembroke said. "Your training starts tomorrow." Quinn was beaming. She half rose from her chair. "I should go pack, right now." "Slow your roll, soldier," Byrne said. A half smile broke over Pembroke's face, then quickly disappeared. A very rare display of actual emotion from the socially awkward man. "While you are at Vandenberg, I want Agent Park to continue analyzing the evidence, especially this exoskeleton," Pembroke said. "The DIA will work up more robust intel packages on General Shang Fu and any of the others identified on the laptop. Like this, Dr. Fang. We need to identify and neutralize anyone who has associations with the Dharmapala." "I'd like to help with that part of the mission," Nick said. "As I said, I need you and the Colonel at Vandenberg. The Persephone will be critical to any lunar rescue effort, so it must be protected. I'm expecting this team to make sure that happens. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Byrne said, speaking for the team. "We won't let you down." "And what about me?" Fatima asked, her annoyance dripping off the question. "Because of the injury to your hand, I assumed you would sit this one out," Pembroke said, "to give you time for rehab and reconditioning." "Rehab?" Fatima was livid. "Let me remind you, I'm the one who killed Chimera." "And that was after she broke my good hand," she said. waving her bandage for everyone to see. "Your point is?" Pembroke asked. "As long as I can pull a trigger, don't count me out," she said. "No one is doubting your abilities, Agent Nostrola," Pembroke said. "However, we follow certain protocols on this team. You'll have to be reassessed and cleared for active duty by Colonel Byrne. No shortcuts." Fatima growled, then pointed a finger gun at Pembroke, who tried to act as if he didn't see it. "Gotcha, boss." As they say, no problemo. Nicks sensed the exchange had only increased the tension in the room. Fatima was a great asset to the team, but she didn't like being told what to do. Of course, neither did Nicks. She was intrigued by the new assignment, but not happy to have her chief concerns about Riza Asmara sidelined. Nevertheless, she would fall in line. Byrne broke in. "Okay, thank you, General Drummond and Director Pembroke. Team, we have a mission, and our individual orders. Let's wrap things up for now. First thing tomorrow, we'll get over to Vandenberg." Everyone nodded in agreement except Pembroke, who held his hand up to interrupt. "If the rest of you would give me the room, I'd like to speak to Captain Nicks privately." Quinn flashed a sarcastic look of shock. "Uh-oh, you're in trouble now," she whispered. Then she was off, sprinting upstairs, most likely to her room, to pack for her new assignment. Chapter 8. As the rest of the team left the meeting, Nicks took a seat closer to Pembroke. She smiled politely at his shimmering ghost. He tapped a computer tablet with one index finger. Being alone with Pembroke always provoked anxiety in Nicks, forcing her to reflect on their traumatic introduction, the haunting memories of her transformation into a cybernetically enhanced soldier. It all began after a suicide bombing in Kandahar nearly tore her apart, leaving her with crushed limbs, lost hearing, and burned skin. The pain was indescribable, like being ripped apart from the inside out. Declared clinically dead on the way to surgery, she was rushed into the Talon program, a top-secret DARPA initiative aimed at creating a super soldier. Talon's experimental procedures replaced her destroyed arms with Talon's cybernetic prostheses, tactical class, reinforced with cutting-edge composites. Her legs were similarly upgraded, giving her strength and agility far beyond human capabilities. Her hearing was restored with Mark II cochlear implants capable of processing sound at superhuman levels, and her skin was replaced with a synthetic layer embedded with sensors to replicate human sensations. All of these bionic components were controlled by the Talon Protocol System, an AI that managed her every move. The procedures were untested, the bionics were prototypes, no other soldier had survived, but against all odds, she did. Now, as Viper, she was a walking weapon, tethered to technology she wasn't sure she could fully accept. The tech was incredible, but Nicks knew her real struggle was internal, learning to live with what she had become. All while under the watchful eye of those who saw her as nothing more than an asset to be used or discarded. Pembroke, assigned to be that watchful eye, had always been a constant reminder of that scrutiny. "Thank you for staying," he said. "I wanted to explain why the team's mission priorities are changing going forward." "Our priorities are changing? That's news to me, sir." She felt slightly embarrassed by her obvious tone of defensiveness. "Yes, I understand," he said. "So let me update you now. The part of the team's recent operations in Mexico triggered a review of our priorities, specifically your experience with the malfunctioning BCI, or brain-computer interface. The sigillum, as you called it." At the mention of that word, Nicks reflexively touched the back of her neck. Riza Asmara had forcibly implanted the device near the base of her skull. The specially designed BCI stood out because of its garish silver skull design. Though it had looked like a body piercing, the ingenious device had been the tool Asmara used to communicate with and control her underlings. She'd tried to do the same with Nicks. It had been a horrible violation and was extremely difficult to remove. "That's not what I called it, sir. Riza Asmara gave it that name," Nicks said, trying very hard to suppress the defiance in her voice. "Yes, that's right." Pembroke said, adjusting the glasses on his face. The chief surgeons within the Talon program have made a new determination about your experience with the device, one that I now accept. What would that be? Nicks asked. He raised a hand. Before I get to that, let me address my concerns that relate to Buenos Aires, he said, leaning forward. Nicks clenched her jaw. What now? More lectures? Captain, I realize we haven't always agreed on tactics, Pembroke began. In the beginning, I had many concerns about your suitability for this team. However, you've proven yourself time and again. Pembroke was understating the past, Nicks thought, but said nothing, only offering a slight tip of her head to acknowledge she remembered that piece of their history. Worried about her suitability as a covert agent, DR Ultra had threatened her with what they called decommissioning, a polite term to describe the exercise of removing all her bionic enhancements and effectively euthanizing her. Eventually, she'd overcome their objections, or so she had assumed. Some people in our chain of command are concerned about your hyper-focus on investigating the Dharmapala. Nicks braced herself. Pembroke didn't pull her aside to give her a pep talk. She could sense the other shoe was about to drop. Hasn't that been the central mission of our task force, sir? To degrade and destroy Riza Asmara's organization? Yes and no, he said. Let me explain. Nicks twisted her head and flashed an inquisitive look at her boss. Please do. The Dharmapala was the first target of our task force, but, as you know, the team's last verifiable contact with Asmara was in Japan, when her base of operations was destroyed. Of course she remembered that. Even though some time had passed, the memories were still vivid. Asmara had imprisoned, tortured, and almost killed the entire team before Nicks came to the rescue. By some miracle, Nicks had overcome the psychotic terrorist, freed herself and the team from the woman's trap, and fled, right as a booby-trapped computer system exploded and destroyed the entire installation. What you don't know is this. We sent a covert DR Ultra forensic team to Japan, and they found human remains within the ruins of that base. This body was destroyed beyond recognition, but the samples collected matched the genetic profile we had on file at Blackwood Lodge. All of these facts lead us to one logical conclusion. Riza Asmara is dead. Nicks wasn't so sure, but she said nothing that betrayed her doubt. I see, and you accept this conclusion as well? Pembroke looked down at the report as if reading directly from it. Yes, Captain, I feel we have no choice. The facts are all here in black and white, he said, shrugging and gesturing at the computer tablet. Now, parts of her organization are still in operation. You uncovered evidence of that in Buenos Aires, and this current mission will address those concerns. But Riza Asmara, the person you and I knew, is no longer a threat. No longer a threat. Nicks clenched her jaw. It wasn't surprising that Pentagon bureaucrats didn't appraise the danger in the same way she did. I don't want to argue with the science, but my personal experience leads me to a different conclusion. When she attacked me in Mexico, she claimed to be alive, then swore she was planning to attack our team and the United States. Pembroke raised a hand. According to this, it appears that your experience in Mexico was a side effect of the malfunctioning sigillum, an artifact of the previous communications or some kind of pre-installed program stored in the device. They believe a combination of stress and Travis Raylock's nanogas that you were subjected to activated it. You're suggesting it was some kind of hallucination? Nicks raised an eyebrow. Hallucination would be a misleading definition. Your brain believed it was real because of the device, but there is no evidence whatsoever that Riza Asmara is alive. So yes, in layman's terms, you might say it was an illusion. Nicks stared past Pembroke. She easily accepted that the visuals had been some kind of deception created by the brain implant, but the presence of Riza Asmara wasn't a computerized trick. It had been way too real. The cadence of speech and the strange psychotic narcissism of the girl proved that. That it could have been pre-recorded didn't fit either. They had discussed events that had occurred after her supposed death. She'd claimed responsibility for Raylock's plan to detonate a dirty bomb on U.S. soil. She'd claimed responsibility for attacking Sheriff Brett Diaz and his young son, Will Diaz. Then, she offered those attacks as proof of what she would do to her team and loved ones. She was hell-bent on making Nicks suffer before she ultimately killed her. Perhaps it was an unverifiable sixth sense, but Nicks was convinced as Mara had been alive at that moment. But Pembroke held the contrary belief, and because of that she had to reassure him she would follow his lead. "Okay, I understand," she replied, trying her best to look as if she truly accepted what was being said, even though she was nowhere close to being able to do so. "Good. Captain Nicks, I don't think I have to remind you of your very special situation. The powers that be are always evaluating and re-evaluating how mission-critical it is to fund DR Ultra. The same goes for my job and the Reaper Force Task Force. We are important to the Pentagon until we are not. I don't need to remind you of the ramifications of them deciding to end the Talon program." Nicks had heard all of this before. It seemed, since day one of getting bionic body parts, the Pentagon had been threatening to take them back. I don't say this as some kind of veiled threat. I say this to make sure we are both clear-eyed about how our decisions affect the entire team. I'd like to suggest that you meet with one of our psychologists to discuss and process whatever trauma you may be dealing with, from this incident and any others. He couldn't look her in the eye as he proposed this, but his tone registered as sincere. "In the spirit of being clear-eyed," she said, her voice taking on a more conciliatory tone. "I wanted you to be the first to know. I found this." She pushed a plastic evidence bag across the table. The bag was sealed and tagged with confidential markings unique to their program. Pembroke stood up and stared down at the bag, mouth agape, as if the bag were a bomb about to explode. Had he been able, he would have stepped through the holographic projection into the room and picked it up. "Where did you get that?" "It was in the safe house. On top of the laptop, to be exact, where I could easily find it." "This wasn't in your report." "Yes, well, with all the whispers about my mental health, how was I supposed to explain finding this and why it's significant without sounding even crazier? Can you imagine? A full-blown report about a child's toy? Any way I'd spin it, the top brass would think I'd really gone bonkers." "Perhaps you're right. We both know what that is," she said, pointing at the toy, "and what it means. She's taunting us, reminding us of our betrayal." "Dear Lord," he said, adjusting his glasses nervously, "but how is this possible, given the evidence?" "I don't know. But Riza swore to me she was going to kill everyone who has hurt her. And she has a long list that includes you, our entire team, everyone we love, and the whole damn country to boot. The Pentagon says she's a chess piece that's been taken off the board. I say that the game is just beginning, and this ridiculous toy, is her sick way of letting us know she's coming for us. I think it would be better if I found her first." Pembroke softened. His voice, usually all business, now tapered into a more personal tone. "Natalie, I'm beginning to understand your position," he said. "DR Ultra has something they call the Biobank. It includes detailed biological data for all our DR Ultra projects. Your team can use it to analyze the forensic evidence from this octopus toy." He stiffened and looked at her earnestly. "You're important to this team, Natalie. We all care about you. And I'm willing to take extra measures to assure your peace of mind. I'll have General Drummond take point on this and fly the biobank to Angelos Grove immediately. I'm sure the test will be negative for Asmara's DNA, and that should put both of our minds at ease." "I appreciate that, sir," she said, as sincerely as she could, being very careful not to agree with his prediction. Silently, she made other calculations. Until she knew in her heart Riza Asmara was dead, she would consider her threats real. They were too serious and too evil for her to dismiss. For now, please help Reaper Force protect the Persephone, Pembroke said, smiling slightly. Your leadership is invaluable. Yes, sir, Nicks said, and she meant it. She had no problem following those orders and working side by side with her team. But there was no way in hell she was giving up the hunt for Asmara. Nicks stood up as Pembroke's holographic ghost disappeared. Godspeed, Viper, he said. We're all counting on you. That concludes this part of Moonbase Rogue. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Please like and subscribe and follow this channel to get the next installment of this exciting story. Visit Mark at JonesMarkC on all the socials for additional information and links to other free audiobooks and the next book in this series. Until next time, thank you for listening.